The Kraftver delegation ship descended through Earth's atmosphere on a Tuesday morning in late September. Commander Zethkel stood at the observation window, his four arms crossed behind his back as he studied the blue and green world below. His species had conquered 17 star systems. They had never lost a war. They had never met a species that could match their warriors in combat. And now they had come to Earth to prove their superiority once again. "The humans have agreed to the contest," said Subcommander Ravenes, approaching with a data tablet. "They seem eager." Zethkel's face plates shifted into what his species considered a smile. Eager to lose. They do not understand what they face. The Kraftver were tall, standing nearly 3 meters high. Their bodies were covered in natural armor plates that could stop most projectile weapons. Each of their four arms ended in hands with retractable claws capable of tearing through steel. They were born fighters, bred for combat over thousands of years of evolution on a harsh world where only the strongest survived. When the Galactic Council had suggested that the Kraftver resolve their territorial dispute with humanity through ritual combat rather than war, both sides had agreed. The Kraftver agreed because they knew they would win. Humanity agreed for reasons the Kraftver did not understand. "The humans have proposed multiple contests," Ravenes continued, reading from the tablet. "They wish to compete in several categories rather than a single battle." "Categories?" Zethkel turned from the window. "What categories?" "They call them sports, physical competitions with specific rules. They have proposed contests of strength, speed, endurance, combat skill, and something they call team coordination." Zethkel laughed, a deep rumbling sound that echoed through the observation deck. "They think to defeat us by dividing the contest. They are fools. We will crush them in every category." The ship landed at the designated location, a massive stadium complex that the humans had built specifically for this event. Zethkel was surprised by the size of it. The main arena could hold over 100,000 spectators, and the seats were already filling with humans eager to watch the competition. A human delegation met them at the landing pad. Their leader was a small female with dark hair and keen eyes. She introduced herself as Director Chen of the Earth Sports Federation. "Welcome to Earth, Commander," she said through a translation device. "We are honored to host these games." "Games," Zethkel repeated. "You call this a game. The future of your species depends on the outcome." Director Chen smiled. It was a strange expression, one that Zethkel could not read. "That's exactly what makes it exciting." The Kraftver were led to their quarters, a building designed to accommodate their larger size. Over the following days, they would learn the rules of each competition and select their champions. The humans seemed very concerned about rules, which Zethkel found amusing. Rules were for the weak. "Tell me about these sports the humans wish to compete in," Zethkel commanded his intelligence officer. The officer, a younger Kraftver named Thalvin, had been studying human culture since they first made contact. He activated a holographic display. "The humans have a very unusual relationship with competition," Thalvin explained. "They compete constantly, against each other and against themselves. They have thousands of different sports, each with its own rules and traditions." "Why?" Zethkel asked. "What purpose does this serve?" "From what I can determine, they believe competition makes them stronger. They have a saying, 'Iron sharpens iron.' By constantly testing themselves against each other, they improve." Zethkel dismissed this with a wave of his upper right hand. "We improve through real combat, through actual war. These games are nothing but play fighting." "Perhaps," Thalvin said carefully, "but Commander, I have studied the records of human athletic achievement. They are impressive." "Impressive for humans. We are Kraftver." The first competition was set for 3 days later. It would be a test of raw strength, lifting heavy objects. The Kraftver selected their strongest warrior, a massive male named Gorath who could lift nearly 2,000 Earth kilograms in his natural state. The humans selected a man named Marcus Cole. When Goreth first saw his opponent, he laughed. Cole was tall for a human but still half the height of a Krathver. His body was thick with muscle, but compared to Goreth's armored form, he looked fragile. "This is their champion," Goreth asked. "I could break him with one hand." "Remember the rules," Zethkal warned. "No direct combat in this event, only lifting." The stadium was packed on the day of the first competition. Humans filled every seat, waving flags and making tremendous noise. The Krathver found the atmosphere overwhelming. Their own contests were conducted in silence, with only the participants present. "Why do they bring so many observers?" Ravenese asked. "They are strange creatures," Zethkal replied. "Perhaps they need witnesses to validate their efforts." The competition began. The rules were simple. Each competitor would lift increasingly heavy weights until one could lift no more. The one who lifted the heaviest weight would win. Goreth went first. The humans had provided special equipment designed to accommodate his 4 arms. He lifted the first weight easily, then the second, then the third. Each time he completed a lift, the crowd made noise, but not the cheering sound they made for their own champion. It was something else, something quieter. Then Cole stepped up. The human man approached the weight with a ritual that Goreth did not understand. He rubbed a white powder on his hands. He breathed deeply several times. He seemed to enter a state of intense focus. And then he lifted. The crowd exploded with sound. Thousands of humans screaming, stomping their feet, making noise with their hands. Cole lifted the weight above his head and held it there, his face turning red with effort, veins standing out on his neck and arms. "He is struggling," Goreth observed. "I lifted that weight easily." But Thalvin was watching Cole's face. "Commander," he said quietly, "look at his eyes." Zethkal looked. Cole's eyes were not filled with pain or fear. They were filled with something else, something fierce, something hungry. The competition continued. Weight after weight was added. Goreth continued to lift, his Krathver biology giving him tremendous natural strength. But Cole kept pace, matching him lift for lift. The crowd grew louder with each round. They chanted Cole's name. They sang songs. They stamped their feet in rhythm. The sound was like nothing the Krathver had ever experienced. It seemed to feed Cole, to give him energy. "What is happening?" Goreth asked during a rest period. "Why do they make so much noise?" "They are supporting their champion," Thalvin explained. "They believe their energy can help him perform better." Ridiculous superstition. But as the weights grew heavier, something strange happened. Goreth began to feel the strain. His muscles, engineered by millions of years of evolution, were reaching their limits. He lifted the next weight, but barely. Cole approached the same weight. The crowd fell silent. Every human in the stadium held their breath. Cole looked at the weight. He looked at the crowd. He nodded once. Then he bent down, gripped the bar, and screamed. It was not a scream of pain. It was a scream of defiance. A scream that said he would lift this weight or die trying. And as he screamed, the crowd screamed with him. 100,000 humans adding their voices to his. Cole lifted the weight. His whole body shook. Blood vessels burst in his eyes. But he lifted it, held it above his head, and then slammed it down with a roar of triumph. Goreth stared. "How?" he asked. "His body is not built for this. He should not be able to match me." Thalvin was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I believe, Commander, that we have underestimated these humans." The final weight was brought out. It was more than anyone expected either competitor to lift. Goreth attempted it first. He strained, he struggled, he gave everything his Krathver body could give. He failed. The weight would not move. Goreth stepped back, exhausted and confused. He had never failed at anything before. He had never faced a challenge he could not overcome through raw strength alone. Cole approached the weight. The stadium was silent again. But this silence was different. It was not the absence of sound. It was anticipation, it was belief. Cole looked at the weight, he looked at the crowd, and then he did something that confused every Crathver watching. He smiled. The aftermath of the first competition sent shockwaves through the Crathver delegation. Marcus Cole had failed to lift the final weight, just as Gorath had. The event was declared a draw, but to Zethkal, a draw against a species they were supposed to dominate completely was as devastating as a loss. "How did this happen?" he demanded at the emergency meeting that night. "Gorath is our strongest warrior. He should have crushed that human." Gorath stood in the corner, still confused by what had occurred. "The human's body was failing," he said. "I could see it. His muscles were tearing. His joints were grinding. His heart was working too hard. By all measures, he should have collapsed before I did." "But he didn't," Thalvin said quietly, "and that is what we must understand." "Explain," Zethkal commanded. Thalvin activated his data tablet. "I have been researching human athletic history. What I have found is disturbing. These humans have been competing against each other for thousands of years. They have records dating back to something called the Ancient Olympics, competitions held over 2,000 Earth years ago." "So they are experienced at games," Ravani said dismissively. "Games are not war." "No," Thalvin agreed. "But consider this. Every generation of humans has tried to beat the records of the generation before. They have been constantly improving, constantly pushing beyond what was thought possible. Let me show you something." He displayed a series of images on the holographic screen. "This is a human running contest called the Marathon. It covers approximately 42 kilometers. The first recorded time for this distance was several hours, but over time, humans have improved. They have refined their techniques, their training, their nutrition. Now their fastest runners complete the distance in just over 2 hours." "2 hours for 42 kilometers?" Gorath asked. "That is not particularly impressive for a Crathver." "No," Thalvin admitted. "But that is not the point. The point is the improvement. Humans have cut their time in half through nothing but dedicated practice and competition. They have no genetic modifications, no biological advantages, just an endless drive to be better than they were before." Zethkal considered this. "You are saying they have trained themselves to overcome their natural limitations." "I am saying they do not believe in natural limitations. When a human is told something is impossible, they treat it as a challenge. They have a history of doing what cannot be done, simply because someone said it could not be done." The next competition was scheduled for 2 days later. It was a test of speed, a race over a short distance. The Crathver selected a warrior named Velith, known for his quick reflexes and powerful legs. The humans selected a woman named Sarah Okonkwo. Velith was confident. The Crathver could run faster than any other known species over short distances. Their powerful legs and streamlined bodies made them natural sprinters. Sarah Okonkwo was not intimidating in appearance. She was lean, almost thin, with long legs and a calm expression. When Velith first saw her, he dismissed her as he had dismissed all humans. "She is built like prey," he observed, "small and fragile." But Thalvin had been studying her records. "She is considered the fastest human alive," he said. "She has broken records that stood for decades. Her people call her the Lightning." Velith laughed. "Let her bring her lightning. I will show her what real speed looks like." The race was set for 100 meters, the standard human sprint distance. Both competitors took their positions at the starting line. The crowd, even larger than before, fell into that familiar expectant silence. Velith looked at his opponent. Okonkwo was completely still, her body coiled and ready. Her eyes were focused on the track ahead. She did not look at him, did not acknowledge his presence. It was as if he did not exist. Only the race mattered. The signal sounded. Both competitors exploded from the starting line. For the first few meters, Velith was ahead. His powerful Krathver legs drove him forward with tremendous force. He felt the wind rushing past him, heard the crowd beginning to roar. Victory was assured. Then something happened that he did not expect. Okonkwo caught up. Her legs moved in a blur, her body perfectly balanced, every motion optimized for maximum efficiency. She was not running like a Krathver, using brute strength to power forward. She was running like something else entirely, like a machine. Like every movement had been practiced 1,000,000 times until it was perfect. They crossed the finish line at nearly the same moment. The electronic timing system had to be checked 3 times before the result was announced. Okonkwo had won by 0.03 of a second. The stadium erupted. Humans were crying, hugging each other, screaming with joy. Velith stood at the finish line, his heart's pounding, unable to understand what had just happened. "I was faster," he said when he returned to the Krathver delegation. "I know I was faster. My legs are stronger. My stride is longer." "You were stronger," Thalvin agreed. "Your stride was longer, but she was more efficient. She wasted no energy. Every movement served a purpose, and she started faster than you did." "Faster at the start, how?" "Practice. Thousands of hours of practice, just on the start. Humans have analyzed the sprint start in incredible detail. They know exactly how to position their bodies, how to transfer weight, how to maximize the force of their first few steps. This woman has been practicing her start since she was a child." Velith was silent for a long moment. They trained for these competitions as if they were training for war. "No," Thalvin said. "They train harder. In war, you only need to be better than your enemy. In their competitions, they try to be better than anyone who has ever lived." The next event was a test of endurance. This, Zethkal was certain, would be their victory. The Krathver had evolved on a world where food was scarce and distances were vast. They could travel for days without rest, pursuing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. The competition was a race over 100 kilometers. The Krathver selected Commander Zethkal himself. He would not trust this important task to anyone else. His opponent was a thin, weathered human man named James Whitehorse. He was older than the other human champions, with gray in his hair and lines on his face. Zethkal almost felt insulted. "You send an old man against me?" he asked Director Chen. "James has run this distance over 50 times," she replied. "He has run longer distances through deserts and mountains. He has pushed his body to limits that most humans cannot imagine. He is old, his body is failing." Chen smiled that strange smile again. "You might be surprised." The race began at dawn. The course wound through varied terrain, hills and valleys, forests and open plains. Zethkal set a strong pace, confident in his ability to outlast any human. For the first 20 kilometers, everything went as expected. Zethkal maintained his lead, his powerful Krathver body carrying him forward with seemingly endless energy. Whitehorse fell behind, his shorter legs unable to match the alien's stride. But Whitehorse did not seem concerned. He ran with a steady rhythm, his breathing controlled, his face calm. He was not trying to catch up. He was not trying to win. He was simply running. At 30 kilometers, Zethkal noticed something unexpected. He was getting tired. Not exhausted, but tired. His legs were beginning to feel heavy. His breathing was becoming harder. He looked back. Whitehorse was still there, still running with that same steady rhythm. He had not gained ground, but he had not lost any either. At 50 kilometers, Zethkal understood that something was wrong. His body was designed for endurance, but it was struggling. The human terrain, the earth gravity, the unfamiliar atmosphere, all were taking their toll. And Whitehorse was gaining. "How?" Zethkal gasped as the human pulled alongside him. "You should be dead by now." Whitehorse did not answer immediately. He continued running, his weathered face showing no strain. Finally, he spoke. "Humans invented something called persistence hunting. We cannot run as fast as most prey animals, but we can run for longer. We evolved to chase our prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We are not the fastest species on our planet, but we are the best at not stopping. That is impossible. You are soft, your bodies are weak. Our bodies are adaptable. We sweat to cool ourselves so we do not overheat. Our minds can override our body's desire to stop, and we have learned to love the suffering. Love it. Whitehorse smiled, and there was something ancient in that smile. The pain of endurance is a door. On the other side is something we cannot explain to those who have never experienced it. We call it different things. The runner's high, the zone, the flow, but it is always the same thing. It is becoming more than what you were. At 70 kilometers, Whitehorse pulled ahead. At 80 kilometers, Zethkel was struggling to continue. At 90 kilometers, he understood that he was going to lose. James Whitehorse crossed the finish line 20 minutes before Commander Zethkel. He was exhausted, his body covered in sweat, his legs barely able to hold him up, but he was smiling. Zethkel collapsed at the finish line, his heart's pounding, his muscles burning. He had never felt so defeated in his entire life. He had been beaten by an old man with gray hair and a soft body. "How do you feel?" Whitehorse asked, kneeling beside him. Zethkel looked at the human. "I do not understand your species." "Nobody does, not even us." The Krathver delegation gathered that night in their quarters. The atmosphere was tense. They had expected to dominate these competitions, to prove their superiority beyond any doubt. Instead, they had won one event, lost one, and tied one. The humans were matching them step for step. "This is humiliating," Ravenese said. "We are Krathver. We have conquered 17 star systems." "And we have never faced a species like this," Thalvin replied. "We have conquered 17 star systems because we were stronger, faster, and more resilient than our enemies. But these humans are not like our other enemies." "They are weaker than us," Gorath protested. "I saw it. That human Cole was destroying his own body just to match me." "Yes," Thalvin agreed. "And he did not care. That is what makes them dangerous. They are willing to destroy themselves to win, not because they have to, because they want to." Commander Zethkel had been silent since his defeat. Now he spoke. "Thalvin, you have studied these humans more than anyone. Explain this to me. Why do they do this? Why do they push themselves so hard for something that does not matter?" Thalvin considered the question carefully before answering. "I believe, Commander, that we have misunderstood the purpose of their competitions. We assumed they were practice for war. They are not. They are something else entirely." "What?" "They are practice for being human. These people believe that every person should strive to be better than they were yesterday. Not just warriors. Everyone. They compete not to defeat each other, but to discover how far they can push themselves. The competition is just the tool they use to find their limits." "But why?" "Because they die." Thalvin's voice was quiet. "We live for centuries. They live for decades. They do not have time to wait for improvement. They must force it. They must accelerate it. Every generation must be better than the last because there is no time to waste." Zethkel thought about this. It was true that humans had very short lifespans compared to the Krathver. He had not considered how this might affect their psychology. "So they compete because they are dying," he said slowly. "They compete because they refuse to accept limits. Any limits. Not the limits of their bodies, not the limits of their species, not even the limits of death itself. They truly believe they can become anything if they work hard enough." The next day brought the fourth competition, combat skill. This was the event the Krathver had been looking forward to most. They were bred for fighting. Their claws, their armor, their forearms all made them natural warriors. The rules had been negotiated carefully. No killing, no permanent injuries. The fight would be scored by judges based on technique, control, and dominance. The Krathver selected their champion fighter, a female warrior named Kethra who had never lost a single combat in her 300 years of life. The humans selected a man named Chen Wei. He was not large. He was not particularly muscular. He looked almost delicate compared to the massive Krathver warriors. "Is this a joke?" Kethra asked when she saw him. "They send this tiny thing against me." But Director Chen, who was watching the preparations, only smiled. Wei has been practicing martial arts since he was 4 years old. He is a master of 12 different fighting styles, and he has been preparing for this specific fight for the past 6 months. 6 months? I have been fighting for 3 centuries. Yes, and that may be your disadvantage. The fight began in the main arena, with the full crowd watching. Kethra approached her opponent with supreme confidence. She was twice his height, 3 times his weight. Her 4 arms gave her options no human could match. Her armored body could absorb any blow he could deliver. Chen Wei stood in the center of the arena, perfectly still. He did not take a fighting stance. He simply waited. Kethra attacked. She lunged forward with her lower right arm, claws extended for a disabling strike. It was a move that had ended countless fights before they even truly began. Chen Wei was not there. He had moved, sliding to the side with such speed and grace that Kethra could not track him. Before she could adjust, she felt a strike against the side of her neck, precisely at the gap between her armor plates. Pain shot through her nervous system. It was not damaging, but it was surprising. No one had ever found that weakness before. She spun, lashing out with all 4 arms. Chen Wei ducked under one strike, redirected another, blocked a third, and simply stepped around the 4th. Every movement was efficient, precise, and calculated. "You have 4 arms," he said, his voice calm. "That means 4 times as many joints I can target." He struck again, this time at her lower left elbow. The joint folded in a way it was not supposed to fold. Kethra hissed with pain. "How are you doing this?" she demanded. "I have studied Krathver anatomy for 6 months," he replied. "I know your body better than you do." The fight continued, and with each passing minute, Kethra grew more frustrated. She could not land a solid blow on this tiny human. He was always moving, always one step ahead, always targeting the exact weaknesses she did not know she had. "You are not fighting," she accused. "You are just avoiding." "Fighting is not about strength," Chen Wei replied. "It is about understanding. Understand your opponent and strength becomes irrelevant." Kethra attacked with renewed fury. She was faster than before, more aggressive, more desperate. She stopped trying to be clever and simply tried to overwhelm him with pure Krathver power. Chen Wei changed his approach. Instead of avoiding her attacks, he began to redirect them. When her upper right arm swung at his head, he guided it past him and used its momentum to unbalance her. When her lower arms tried to grab him, he twisted in ways that made her grips work against each other. She was fighting herself as much as she was fighting him. The match ended when Chen Wei placed his hand precisely on a nerve cluster at the base of her skull. He did not strike. He simply placed his hand there and waited. "I could end this now," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "But there is no honor in defeating an opponent who cannot fight back. Do you yield?" Kethra had never yielded in her life, but she also recognized the truth. If this had been real combat, she would already be dead. "I yield." The crowd erupted. The judges declared Chen Wei the winner. The Krathver delegation watched in stunned silence as their greatest warrior walked off the arena floor in defeat. "How is this possible?" Ravenese whispered. "She was our best." Thalvin was reviewing data on his tablet. The human studied her fighting style from recordings of previous Krathver combat. He identified patterns she did not know she had. He developed counters for every move she could make before she ever made them. He prepared for her specifically. For 6 months, every day for hours at a time, he practiced fighting opponents who mimicked Krathver combat styles. He studied our anatomy, our reflexes, our psychological patterns. By the time he stepped into that arena, he had already fought Kethra 1,000 times in his mind. Commander Zethkel felt something he had never felt before in his long life. He felt afraid. "These humans," he said slowly, "they do not just compete, they obsess. They dedicate their entire beings to becoming better at a single thing." "Yes," Thalvin agreed, "and they have been doing it for thousands of years. Every generation passes their knowledge to the next. Every generation builds on what came before. They may only live for decades, but their collective experience spans millennia." "What have we done?" Ravenese asked. "What enemy have we made?" Zethkel looked out the window at the human city beyond. Millions of these strange creatures, all competing against each other in countless ways, all pushing themselves to be better, all refusing to accept limits. "Not an enemy," he said finally. "Something far more dangerous. A species that fights itself to become stronger. A species that treats every limitation as a challenge. A species that would rather destroy itself than stop improving." "What do? We compete in the final event, and then we pray to whatever gods will listen that these humans never decide to turn their competitive nature toward war." The fifth and final competition was something the humans called team coordination. It was not a test of individual strength or skill. It was a test of how well a group could work together toward a common goal. The Krathver did not fully understand this concept. In their society, individuals proved themselves through personal achievement. Teams existed, but they were simply collections of individuals, each trying to outperform the others. Leadership was determined by strength, and orders were followed out of fear. The competition was a complex obstacle course that required multiple participants to work together. Some obstacles could only be overcome by lifting, some by climbing, some by solving puzzles, and some by coordinating movements between team members. No single person could complete the course alone. The Krathver selected their 5 strongest warriors. Commander Zethkel led the team himself. Goreth provided raw strength. Velith provided speed. Kethra, despite her recent defeat, provided combat expertise, and a young warrior named Dreth provided technical knowledge. The humans selected a team that confused the Krathver completely. There was Marcus Cole, the strongman from the first competition. There was a woman the Krathver had not seen before, a slight thing named Maria Santos, who was apparently an expert in puzzles and strategy. There was an athlete named Derek Williams who specialized in climbing. There was a former soldier named Kate Morrison. And leading them all was a man named Jack Harper, who seemed to have no special physical abilities at all. "Why him?" Velith asked, pointing at Harper. "He is ordinary, he is not strong or fast. What does he contribute?" "He is their captain," Director Chen explained. "He tells them what to do. A leader should be the strongest, the most capable. Why would they follow someone weaker than themselves?" "Because he makes them better." The course was revealed the morning of the competition. It was massive, covering several hectares of varied terrain. There were walls to climb, rivers to cross, weights to lift, puzzles to solve, and sections that required precise timing between team members. Both teams studied the course. The Krathver immediately began arguing about the best approach. "I will handle the climbing sections," Velith declared. "I am the fastest." "The strength sections are mine," Goreth countered. "No one can lift more than me." "And the combat sections?" Kethra asked. "Those are clearly mine." "Enough," Zethkel commanded. "We will each take the sections that match our strengths. It is the logical approach." Across the starting area, the human team was having a very different conversation. They stood in a circle, heads close together, voices quiet. Jack Harper was drawing diagrams in the dirt. "The course is designed to punish individual excellence," he was saying. "See how the strength section leads directly into the puzzle section. They want you tired when you have to think. And the climbing section comes right after, when your arms are already exhausted from lifting. So what do? Derek asked. We don't play their game. Maria, you're going to need to start solving the puzzle before we even get there. Derek, you're going to have to rest during the strength section so you're fresh for climbing. Kate, your job is to read the obstacles ahead and communicate to everyone what's coming. What about me? Marcus asked. You're going to have to pace yourself. I know you want to lift everything in sight, but if you burn out, we all fail. Save your energy for when we really need it. The teams took their positions, the signal sounded, the competition began. The Krathver exploded out of the starting area with characteristic aggression. Goreth charged toward the first strength obstacle, lifting massive stones and throwing them aside. Velith sprinted ahead to scout the path. Kethra moved through the combat section, disabling the training dummies with brutal efficiency. They were fast, they were powerful, and they were falling apart. Goreth reached the first strength section and completed it easily, but he was exhausted afterward. When he reached the puzzle section that followed, he could not think clearly. His hands, built for crushing and tearing, struggled with the delicate mechanisms. Velith ran ahead, but without communication from his team, he did not know which path to take. He chose wrong, leading the team into a dead end that cost them precious time. Kethra cleared the combat section but pushed too hard, straining muscles that she would need later. When she reached the climbing section, her arms were shaking. And Commander Zethkal, trying to coordinate everything, found that his warriors did not want to be coordinated. They argued with his decisions. They questioned his orders. They each believed they knew best. The human team moved differently. They moved like a single organism with many parts. Maria had memorized the puzzle before they even reached it. While Marcus lifted the weights in the strength section, she was studying the mechanism, planning her approach. When Marcus finished, tired but not exhausted because he had paced himself, Maria was ready to begin immediately. Derek rested during the strength section, conserving his energy. When they reached the climbing wall, he was fresh and fast. He set ropes for the others, found handholds, created a path that everyone could follow. Kate stood at the center of every section, watching, thinking, communicating. She told Maria which puzzle pieces were where. She told Derek which route had the best handholds. She told Marcus when to push and when to rest. And Jack Harper did something the Krathver could not understand at all. He made sure everyone else succeeded. When Maria was stuck on a puzzle, he asked her questions that helped her find the answer herself. When Derek was getting tired, he reminded him of the training they had done together. When Marcus wanted to lift more than he should, Jack talked him down, reminded him of the bigger picture. He was not the strongest or the fastest or the smartest, but somehow he made everyone else stronger, faster, and smarter. The human team completed the course first by a significant margin. The Krathver finished eventually, but they were scattered, exhausted, and frustrated. Goreth and Velith were arguing about whose fault the delay was. Kethra had to be helped across the finish line. Commander Zethkal stood apart from his team, trying to understand what had just happened. "We should have won," he said to Thalvin afterward. "We are individually superior in every way." "But they were not competing as individuals," Thalvin replied. "They were competing as something greater than themselves. They became more together than they could ever be apart." How do they do this? We have been working together for centuries. We have armies. We have conquered worlds. But we have never achieved what those 5 humans achieved today. Thalvin had been thinking about this since the competition began. "I believe I understand now, Commander, and I believe I know why the humans invented competition." "Tell me." "They are a species that climbed down from trees as prey animals on a planet full of predators. They had no claws, no armor, no venom. They should have gone extinct millions of years ago, but they survived because they learned to work together. not as individuals pursuing individual glory, but as a collective pursuing collective survival. But their competitions are individual. They reward personal achievement. No, we only see individual achievements because that is what we look for. But look closer. Every human champion has coaches, trainers, supporters. Every record is built on the shoulders of everyone who came before. Even in individual sports, they are never truly alone. Zethkel thought about Marcus Cole and the crowd that screamed his name, about Chen Wei and the 6 months of training with partners who helped him prepare, about James Whitehorse and the long tradition of endurance running that shaped his body and mind. They compete against each other to make each other better, he said slowly. The competition itself is cooperation. Every time one human pushes the limit, all humans benefit. Yes, and it has been going on for thousands of years. Millions of humans competing against each other and learning from each other, constantly improving. They have turned their entire species into a training program for excellence. And we challenged them. Zethkel suddenly felt very foolish. We challenged the species that invented challenge. We tried to prove our superiority to a people who have spent their entire existence trying to overcome superior opponents. We did not know, we could not have known. What do we do now? The answer came from Director Chen, who had approached without them noticing. Now, she said, you decide what kind of relationship you want to have with humanity. You can be our competitors, constantly pushing each other to be better. Or you can be our enemies, which I would not recommend. Or you can be something else entirely. What else is there? Partners, teammates. You have strengths we do not. We have strengths you do not. Together, we could be something neither species could be alone. Commander Zethkel looked at the human woman. She was small, soft, fragile by Krathver standards. But behind her eyes was that same fierce hunger he had seen in all of them. The hunger to be better. The refusal to accept limits. Why would you want us as partners? He asked. We came here to dominate you, to prove our superiority. We threatened your world. Because having you as partners makes us better, Chen replied simply. That is all we have ever wanted. You are the biggest challenge we have ever faced. Do you have any idea how exciting that is for us? Zethkel laughed. He could not help it. These insane creatures were actually happy that a powerful alien species had challenged them. They were grateful for the threat. Your species is mad, he said. Probably, but we prefer to call it competitive. The negotiations that followed were unlike any the Krathver had ever participated in. Instead of determining who would submit to whom, they discussed how both species could grow together. Joint training programs, shared competitions, combined research into athletic performance. The humans wanted to learn from the Krathver's superior physiology. They wanted to understand how their bodies worked, how their evolution had created such natural warriors, not to defeat them, but to find new ways to push human limits. And the Krathver, despite themselves, found that they wanted to learn from the humans too. They wanted to understand how these soft, fragile creatures had developed such fierce determination. They wanted to know the secret of turning competition into cooperation. We will return to the council, Commander Zethkel announced at the final ceremony. We will report that the humans are not to be conquered. They are to be respected. Any species that tries to dominate them will face the same fate we did. Defeat, Director Chen asked. No, understanding. They will try to prove they are superior, and they will discover that superiority means nothing to humans. These creatures do not care about who is better. They only care about becoming better, and that is something no species can defeat. The Krathver ships lifted off from Earth a week later. As they broke through the atmosphere, Zethkel took one last look at the blue and green world below. Somewhere down there, humans were running races, lifting weights, solving puzzles, fighting each other in controlled competitions. They were pushing themselves to be better, just as they had been doing for thousands of years. What will you report to the Galactic Council? Thalvin asked. The truth, that we came to Earth to prove our strength and discovered that strength is not what makes a species dangerous. What makes a species dangerous is the refusal to stop improving, and the humans have made improvement into an art form. Do you think the Council will understand? No, they will have to learn for themselves, just as we did. Zethkal turned away from the window. But I hope they learn quickly, because these humans are not going to stay on their little planet forever. Someday they will reach the stars, and when they do, they will bring their competitions with them. That sounds like a threat. No, it sounds like a promise, and if we are smart, we will be their partners when it happens, because I would rather compete alongside humans than against them. The ships engaged their faster-than-light drives and disappeared into the void. Behind them, on Earth, a new generation of athletes was already training, already pushing limits, already refusing to accept that anything was impossible. Because that was what humans did. That was why they invented competition, not to defeat each other, but to discover together just how far they could go. And they had not even begun to find out.